but the Nun Hey, but on the Gilin there is Nun Hey on the side of the page. And we are still discussing the principle that there is the phenomenon of Milo Mata, higher and lower, even in the Iyar. It has been explained that this is really a phenomenal thing, because Iyar is a constant rejuvenation, constant emanation from this source, and yet there's Milo Mata, and the reason there's Milo Mata is due to the Keli.
Actually, we left off in the middle of the fourth line yesterday.
Fourth line from where?
From the top.
Oh yeah, that's right. Go. Okay, so that's where we're going back. The line begins with the word nikarim aprotim klal. Okay, so there are differences in the Iyar, Milo and Mata. And so we said that the reason that there is a difference in the Iyar is due to the Keli. But then if it is due to the Keli, it is not in the Iyar. It is simply that the Keli does not have the full impact of the Iyar. But we are saying that there is, in the Iyar itself, there is a difference, and different madregas, different higher and lower. And the explanation for that is, we say yes, it's in the Iyar, because the Iyar is an Iyar pnimi, which means inherent in the Iyar is the principle of being mislabish in the Keli. And since in the Keli there are differences, Milo Mata, thus in the Iyar too there's differences from Milo Mata. Because the Iyar and the Keli become one. Essentially, just want to point out, there is a principal difference between the Ratzon and the chacham and the Sechel. Ratzon is based entirely on the nefesh. The nefesh wants. Ratzon does not engage in does not get involved in anything external to the nefesh. Sechel, even Chochmah, is identifying things as they are in existence in the world. And that's why in Sechel there is the slapshus in Kelim. Ratzon does not have a Kelim.
Really, Sechel is identifying things as they exist in the world?
Right. Even Chochmah. Chochmah is get the Nakuda, but the Nakuda is as the Nakuda pertains, explains, so to speak, the world. How you see the world from this Nakuda, from this perspective. So you only see the Nakuda, and you don't see the protein, but inherent in this Nakuda are also the protein. Okay, V'gabe chacham gadol, so that's the fourth line, in the middle of the fourth line. So initially in the Nakuda you don't see any protein. Only see the point. V'gabe chacham gadol, but in the experience and the mind of a chacham gadol, of a very great chacham, by whom chachma is in a full force, nikarim etzloi la'atzmai, Haprotim Shebanakuda. By him, for his personal recognition, to himself are already recognizable. The protim, all the content of this nakuda. The be'ez, which means this. The be'ez shenoifel lehasei haskola chadosho, that at the very moment when a new concept, as we explained yesterday, haskola means conceptualization, a novel insight. When that comes up by him, noifel means it falls in. It comes a sudden spark of realization. Meyirim etzloi haprotim shebozeh. So all the protim, and all the content, and all the influences, and the consequences of this nekuda are in full glory and full shine. He recognizes the content in the nekuda. And yet still, they are meir, they shine, but nevertheless, hareza behelem, it still is behelem in a subtle, in a concealed manner. Ubebechinas makif, which means it is in a makif, in a supervisory manner rather than in personal involvement. V'hainu, it says in parentheses, v'hainu, which means to say, shagam la'atzmoi, that even to himself, hu b'b'chinas helem u'makiv, it is in a state of helem, of subtlety, and makif, and only overview, legabe klolos haskolas ha'inyan, relative to the concept, to the total view of the inyan. The total view in the inyan, there's a clarity, whereas the content and the protein are seen from afar, so to speak. Omashe b'his galus, and b'his galus in a full recognition, hurak and nekudas hasichli ha'levad, is only the point. All this is to explain how there is what's called the milo mata in Sechel, even in Chochmah, higher and lower. There is the kudas asichli, and then there is the protim, and the protim are not yet, even by the Chacham Gadol, are not yet in full definition. Let's discuss this a little bit. It says, Chacham Gadol, there is protim, and then he says, but it's still behelem. What is this mean? What is this about? He pointed out an interesting thing, a much lower level. A young child, you show him something interesting, something nice. He pointed out interesting things. That when he has this thing in his hand, examining it is not sufficient. The first thing he does is put it in his mouth. What is the inyan that he puts it in his mouth? Because to this child, observation does not bring it to reality. That which he tastes in his mouth, that's when it's real. So he takes it in his mouth. What is this? What is the point of this? The same difference, this is on the extremes, the same difference is between a chacham gadol and a chacham that's not so great. The higher the chacham, the greater the chacham, the more he is relying on his view on this chachma, rather than having to identify it in its place and making sense of it. A person who is not of that caliber of a chacham, he also sees in a maquette and he interprets it on a lower level and he tries to make sense of it.
The higher chacham doesn't do that.
The higher chacham doesn't need to do that. He sees from a chachma perspective, it is real to him.
Nekudat Sechel, Labad, just the point.
Okay. So the nekudat Sechel, but in this nekudah there are all the protim, and the protim are real to him, even though they are only part of the nekudah.
And we use the example of a small child to create a contrast. That is what the higher chacham has no need to materialize it at all.
Right.
Doesn't need to bring out the implications or bring out.
That's right. The higher chacham, chachma is real to him. One who is not at that caliber, that level, the chachma is only illuminating the mitzias at the lower level.
And we got into this because we're looking at the way that there's higher and lower.
Right. Let me explain this phenomenon. Chokhmah is real to him. The reason that Chokhmah is real to him, because a Chacham Gadol has a full cognizance, and his identity with reality is the reality as is presented to him from above. Not as he experiences it in the world. The world itself is real to him, as the Rebbe says, because it says in the Pasuk, "Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz." It's how God created the world, and therefore he sees its reality. So this Chacham Gadol, he sees things. What makes it real because they exist in their inception. They exist from the perspective of the Bereshit bara Elokim, of the godly perspective. This is what makes it real. And that's why, since this is what makes it real, all the protim and all the aspects in the world are also real because of that perspective. So let's take this in a practical level. You give tzedakah, you give a penny to a poor person. This is an act that exists in the world. You give him this dollar, and you perceive that this dollar is going to buy him some food, and this will satisfy his hunger. From a higher perspective, from a godly perspective, this is bestowing a spirit of support. But how will this materializes later on? That's a different plane, a different level. The important thing is that this is hashpah from a true source. This is why it says that tzedakah is Hashem's mitzvah. Hashem is the first one who does this mitzvah.
Yeah. I'm trying to see this. Ma'aseh hu Iyar. Why do we even say? I mean, here obviously the Iyar is how it's coming from above. The chacham gadol is not concerned with implications, not with deed, not with pratim.
No. You're taking it a little too far.
Mm-hmm.
He is concerned, and they said Ma'aseh hu Iyar. But he sees the Ma'aseh from the Sechel, from the chachma level.
So the chacham is the Iyar.
Not conceptually, not just an idea, but he sees the practical, the value of the Ma'aseh itself. Like he says, this is mitzvah Hashem. Hashem creates it. It's real.
He sees the reality of deed from a truth perspective.
From a truth perspective.
Even though it's occurring in a worldly setting,
that's right.
He's not.
That's right. When we say Ma'aseh hu Iyar, we're thinking not of the Ma'aseh, we're thinking not of the act, but on the consequence of the act.
Or the origin of the consequence. We're not thinking what we can get out of it.
When we speak Ma'aseh hu Iyar, we're speaking because it accomplishes something in the world. We're talking about the consequence of the act.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the Chacham sees it not from the consequence, from the act itself. This Ma'aseh reveals a godliness in the world.
Right, and this act itself is not the child's equivalent of putting it in his mouth.
That's right.
It's the act as it is above almost.
That's right.
Okay.
Let me see what time it is and see if I have time to. I want to take a few minutes. We had a mashal yesterday. Of a person serving a guest. Remember that one? Different cups, different and all that. Surprisingly, some people do not recognize the difference between one another. Okay, so, but we see that if you serve it with finesse, there is more oil. Remember that one? There's more oil. And oil reflects the personal attention, personal involvement in this interaction. In other words, it is not merely satisfying his hunger, but the personal attention of a person relating to him. Why is this personal attention so important? Why is it so significant? After all, he personally gets this service. Well, what kind of hashpah? What does that do for him when he has this personal attention? Is this just a question of kavod? What is it? So this is a principle that we've been discussing lately. We even had a broad discussion about somebody comes into the attic of your home. And we say it bothers you a lot, even though he's not disturbing your activities. And we came to a point to recognize that not only does it bother you, but that bothers you more than if he moves into your living room. because this is an infringement of some kind of a level of truth of you that is more than interference with your activities. Interference with activities has a definitive level, a limit. Where this has no limit. This is simply denying a certain truth about your presence. This truth about your presence, where does it come from? Where does a human being get this kind of a truth? This truth exists in the world. Let's understand. This truth exists in the world only due to the fact that the world is a godly creation. If the world is an evolutionary process, it doesn't have that kind of truth at all. The most powerful, the most important, the most significant aspect in the world is that Hashem wants it. Like we say, Ratzon, Aliyah Ratzon. This is what gives it its a principle, true presence.
And we use the example of the cups in the house to give us some kind of
to show
feel.
How this truth can be reduced. It can be reduced to different levels. This truth is in the Kudah. But then it can be expressed in full glory and in a much reduced level.
Okay. Okay.
But ultimately, this truth is based on the principle that there is a creator. The extent to which this is recognized, that depends on that is what forms these different levels.
I think I'm having a slight disconnect where this difference between the cups or this element about owning the home, is it a validation? The only reason a person would sense that is on account of this being God's world. There is no other possible, or it's an illustration of the fact that this is God's world.
That's right. If we made the distinction clearly, a human being owns a home versus the lion who protects his turf.
Okay, and they could, and we're also excluding any other possibility. This couldn't be a social construct. This couldn't be a national ideal.
It could all be, but it still falls short of this reality.
Again, it could be, but it would fall short of what?
Of the reality that we're identifying, of the fact that it's a God-given right.
Oh, so it's not proof positive that God is wanting this world. It's an illustration that's God.
No, it is. Oh, okay. For those who are sensitive to it, it is proof positive. It's the only reason that it has that significance.
Right. People may point to other things, social norms, etc., but we're saying forget all that.
That's right. That's not the real thing.
Got it. Okay.
And we pointed out that this goes so deep in the person's mind, in the person's soul, that we said that to sleep on a cot in a home gives a person a deeper rest than to sleep on a cushion, a mattress in a hotel. This is when this is experienced, so to speak. So coming back to this serving the guest and showing him a cognizance, showing him a deference and recognition, this is all giving him the sense and relating him to his own truth. I recognize that his right, so to speak, and his godly, the godly phenomenon of this relationship. It all depends on the level, but ultimately, this is where it's at. This is why it's so significant.
This is where it's at because that
there's a truth to his being.
Right, the deed with that relating to each other is the truth element.
That's right.
You can't just have the deed without that relationship piece.
You could, but then the deed is lacking the chayas.
We stripped out. Okay, and we started exploring this because
it's like, you throw a morsel of food to the dog, or you throw a piece of food to the human being. It's worlds apart. To the dog, he's perfectly satisfied. A human being can't even pick it up and eat. All right. So, coming back to the scene, the chacham gadol, he perceives everything from that perspective, that level. This is why in the Nakudas HaSkola he sees all the protim are present there. But then too there is differences. The protim initially are nikarim protim, they're recognized, but nevertheless they are still behelim.
So what he has them, but they're all behelim.
They're all behelim. In a subtle way, he recognizes them.
Okay, and what's revealed to him is rak nekuda levad.
Not nekuda levad. This is something which really would need a broad, a deeper dig to identify the difference. He has it behelim, but he has it. What's the difference? The principle that he has it behelim, but it's only behelim, is, as I said before, there's a fundamental difference between Ratzon and Sechel. Even Chochma, Sechel at the level of Chochma, which is only in the Nekudas HaSkola, which is only a concept. Conceptualization. There is a so to speak, a principal difference, a distance between the Ratzon and the concept. Let us discuss it on the basis of what we already had said before. We said we use the car as an illustration of our experience. It says that a person sees a point at a distance. The car is the product of that sight. He sees it at a distance, and he perceives that this distance can be covered. I can actually get to that point. And this is what begets the concept of a car. to travel distance, not only to see it, but to travel. Okay, do we have that? Remember, this is not an old thing. Discuss it.
Right. We're getting into the difference between Ratzon and Sechel.
That's right. That's right.
And why we're getting into that? Because it came up.
Because he says that in the Sechel there is the protim behelim.
Okay.
So what does it mean? Are the protim there or not there? And if they are, why are they behelim?
And to answer this, we have to look at Ratzon and Sechel.
That's right. In Ratzon, there are no protim at all.
It's like the Nakuda for the Sechel.
Like the Nakuda. Like we say, the distance from here to there, that's just seen, is totally, the distance doesn't exist. I hop right across from here to there, there's no distance. In Sechel, there is a distance.
Yeah.
And this distance, this is what we mean that the protim are included, but behelim. Because you don't perceive the distance in terms of how many miles is it and how difficult it will be to get there. That's just that there is a distance. Whereas, because Sechel comes already in some kind of a spatial perception. Ratzon does not know of any limits. I am where I want to be.
Yeah. Ratzon seems outside of any spatial orientation at all. So
Totally.
So in what way are the pratim behelim?
No, that's Ratzon. Ratzon doesn't. There's no protim.
Oh, they're none at all. They're not even there behelim.
No,
okay.
no. Sechel in Chochma there is a protim.
By Chochma they're there, but behelim.
Behelim.
By Ratzon, no pratim.
Ratzon there is no obstruction,
Yeah.
no limits.
Yeah.
That's why it says. And the Mashem said, "Mokim sheditzayna shalodam shamhu." It's an amazing thing.
But by Chochma, even though it's just a flash, already it's
Behelim, they're all the protim.
Uh-huh.
But his galus is only in Kudzah Sechel. What? Should we say the parentheses quickly? Okay, just I'm up to the hoidere, so I don't know how you guys. There's nobody here now.
I'm up to a cup of coffee right now.
Okay, go and take your cup. Okay, so this is where we're up to. Okay, but I think Baruch Hashem, we identified the difference between the way it is in Ratzon, the way it is in Chochma, and we'll go further down. And this is. It's an amazing. Chochma is like a nakuda. It grasps the whole Ratzon, but it's Chochma, Sechel, not Ratzon.
It grasps the whole Ratzon?
And it's a nakuda, right? It grasps the principle, but it's in Sechel. There's a presence to it, and there are protim therein.
Is it okay to think of it as a subset, as a derivative from Ratzon? You get a point of Sechel, a point of Chochma?
It is a derivative,
Okay.
but again, there's difference between Bina is also a derivative of Ratzon. But in Bina, it's very structured into a structure.
Chochma is like a more faithful representation.
That's right.
Yet it already has Nakudas.
Inherent in it is a Nakudas, is a protim, but he does not know the protim through by identifying the protim. He knows the protim by identifying the Nakuda.
Is there a way to think of how Chochma is such a faithful reflection of Ratzon, yet it's already somehow nogea to pratim?
I'm saying it's not negate to protim. It contains protim because
right.
It's translated the Ratzon in Mitzias all over the world.
And if it relates to Mitzias and world, so how is it in any way really faithful to Ratzon? Because now it's dealing with and facing world.
The world is spatial.
Exactly. So but how is it? Still
But he sees it from top down. Why is there a world?
Oh, so with that he remains connected to the
Connected
Ratzon?
to the Ratzon. It's like in your home. There's space. Why is there a space? Why is there a home? Because it's my home. Doesn't make any difference, any distance from me.
Yeah.
But there is still the space.